It was actually a blessing. The 4 pastors had gotten together and purchased this shirt. And when they gave it to me the last night, they said, "You're now one of us, so you have to represent." So I'm representing a culture tonight. It's kind of an daunting task to know exactly what to say for a testimony time because you only got so much time, and I feel like it's almost in a way kind of like the Bible. It's got several different layers that you could different angles you can attack it at. Obviously there's the historical side, what actually happened. I'm sure that'll be covered, and you all have got a pretty good idea of what goes on during the campaigns. Then there's obviously some things that the Lord shows you in your personal life, in your personal walk while on these campaigns. A lot of times people think, they'll go over there with the mindset of, okay, I'm here to pass out, 200,000 John and Romans, and not realize that sometimes the trip is really the Lord working on your heart and in your personal life. So there's that aspect. And then, of course, there's the future side of stuff of the work that's left behind. And that's something I kind of want to cover in my testimony tonight. The Lord really impressed upon my heart just the amount of work that is left in the hands of the 4 pastors that we support. I wish I could put into words the amount of labor that's going to be required to start these churches, to disciple these men and these women, and it's going to be a huge workload. So I kind of said that jokingly when I said I'm representing, but they do covet your prayers. Pastor Alex and Pastor Daniel especially are going to have a huge workload since they are the pastors of the local churches there in Mizuzu, Light Baptist and Charity Baptist churches. The last campaign meeting, there were roughly 500 people that came to get saved. And of those, if you guys get the text updates on WhatsApp, about 257 of those signed up for discipleship. That is almost twice our size here right now. And if you can imagine, these pastors, don't have a ton of guys that can help disciple, so a lot of it lands on their shoulders. And I just want to ask you to remember to keep them in prayer for the months following. Obviously, right now we're all hyped up about the campaign. We get to come back and give you guys testimonies, but the work is going to continue for months on end. And just to give you a little, peek into the work that they had for the previous campaigns, Brother Robinson stood up during one of the morning challenges and gave a testimony after several of the pastors and the older disciples had given testimony in song, and also a few of them had spoken about the work being done. And Brother Robinson said that after the Lilongwe campaign, they would get up Saturday morning, drive 6 to 8 hours down to Lilongwe, the capital, teach the guys for 4 to 6 hours discipleship every Saturday, and then they would travel back that night, arrive at about 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, so they could be ready for church Sunday morning to be able to preach in their churches. That is a hard workload. And yes, it is a blessing that we're able to support them financially, so that way they don't have to do the physical jobs that you and I do, but they have a lot in their hands. And then you add on top of that, when we went down to Blantyre, which is 14 hours away, they still made that same trip. Granted, they left on Friday, discipled Saturday morning, and came back Saturday night still to be able to teach. They're not neglecting their churches. They're still teaching and preaching in their churches. So I just ask that you keep them in prayer. There's going to be a lot of opposition. As you can imagine, we saw how we went forward and had the John and Roman shipped out early, and they barely arrived in time. That's not coincidence. The Lord still gets his will accomplished, but there's going to be a lot of opposition. And talking to Brother Robinson, he said that in the past, he could see opposition from amongst the groups that kind of, the disciples. There were some that wanted to draw crowds away to their own churches, and this time there was a lot more unity amongst the pastors. but he can see a lot of opposition coming potentially from the government. And I don't know if Brother Darling's going to show in the slide, but one of the very first billboards that you see when you land in the Longway, driving up to Mazuzu, is a huge billboard with the Malawian president and a Muslim leader shaking hands, the president welcoming this Islamic leader into Malawi. The doors aren't going to last, they're not going to be open very long. And I've seen it firsthand in the Philippines. When we arrived, my family arrived in 2008, there was not a single Muslim in our village of about 10,000 people. By the time I came back in 2015, they already owned the banks, they were in the government, and they were running the market. It doesn't take very long. And you could see it, just the door of opportunity close, because they're very oppressive and they have a lot of money behind them. The devil can use those things to accomplish his will, and the Lord's coming back soon. So just pray that these men would be able to really ground these new converts in true doctrine, that they would be able to stand against the wiles of the devil, because the devil's going to do all he can to tear apart the work. So I encourage you to go if you get a chance. Otherwise, I'll let someone else.
Well, I don't get to preach, so this must be what it feels like when somebody gets up Sunday morning and preaches a sermon that's like exactly like what you're going to say, but instead of it being a stress, it's a confirmation that maybe the Lord is trying to impress you guys with something. Because we did not talk about what we wanted to say tonight, and like he said, there's a lot that you can choose from. There's a lot that goes on these trips. It's a short amount of time, but so much is packed in. I mean, spiritually, emotionally, physically, it's so much. And so it is difficult to decide like which angle to choose and like what the Lord really wants you guys to get from this. But he put on my heart that something that really stood out to me over the campaign was the effect that we had on the Africans, on their work, on even their individual spiritual walks with the Lord. And I just wanted to kind of mention a couple of things about that, and hopefully, like Jonathan said, you guys can be impressed with the fact that there is still a great work going on. It doesn't end when we come home, you know that. But it's just being there and seeing the spiritual battle going on as you're going, on the streets, you're going to the meetings. It's really, really humbling to be there. It's humbling when you hear the testimonies from the Malawans and the thank yous, and you feel like you're not doing that much, but you're doing what the Lord wants you to do, and that's all you can do. And they're doing the same. So please just keep them in your prayers, and I know it's hard maybe to imagine, but maybe if you can read some of the updates, see some of the videos that have been from past campaigns, and try to imagine the battle that they're facing right there. There's a battle everywhere. There's spiritual warfare all over. But when the Lord is doing something that big in a specific location, the devil is going to try to do something that big as well. So please help them with your prayers, and I just hope that you can be impressed with the seriousness of that, because one thing I did see just over the course of these days, if you want to see God do something, you need to be praying. If you're not praying, you'll never have that experience that he answered my prayer, or he did that for me, or he did that for all these people. It's amazing. Just pray. The Lord will make himself real to you in ways that you will never experience in other situations. But I was just going to mention a couple things. Going on a trip like this in the heart of Africa, being, a woman, a redhead, and just completely opposite from what they are, it's a little bit intimidating the first hour on the street when you're thrown into the middle of a work camp with all these guys, and you're like, okay, here we go. I don't know what they're saying, I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna just do what I'm supposed to do. But as the trip went on, and you get to like kind of understand the people and just be able to read them. You really see that there's this need over there, for, especially with the churches, especially with the individuals that are saved. Even they need an encouragement. They need they get so encouraged by seeing the same spirit in you that they're trying to grow in themselves, that they're so hungry for the truth and they're just eating it up. And so they eat up that fellowship, they eat up the testimonies, and just you being there. And so it was just a blessing, and like I said, really humbling to, once you realize that, be like, okay, Lord, what can I do for them in this short time that I'm here, and try to minister to them, even though some of them just don't understand that well. But it is a blessing. It's something, as they grow, that same spirit of fellowship, it's just a blessing. One thing that was neat to see the Lord use us Americans, we were blessed to be able to stay in this really, really nice hotel. Brother Darling got a really nice place for us, and it was a blessing to see how the Lord kind of worked that out. And at first you feel a little bit spoiled, like, wow, I'm coming here to minister and I'm staying in this nice place. I feel a little guilty. And then come Sunday, they had we went to one of their churches and were able to attend their service, and they had visitors stand up in their church. And I can't remember the exact number. I think there was 4, maybe, or 3 or 4 that were visitors from the hotel. They were workers from the hotel that we were staying at. They saw us there, they got tracts, they saw the testimony, and they wanted to check out this church. And that was a blessing. I was like, it's worth it. Yes. it is, it's still, the Lord can use anything. So that was a blessing. And of course, it was nice to be in a nice place too. But anyway, so that was really neat to see that effect, just the Lord using that. Because sometimes you kind of feel like they're doing so much work. They do so much work when we leave. They do so much work before we come. In a way, in the back of your mind, you're like, what am I doing here? Like, they can do this. They can do this without me. And then the Lord just says, but I told you to go. I told you to be here. And if you're just going to, be an empty, willing vessel, I can use this thing. I can use that thing. I can use the fact that you speak English. There was one day on the street, I was walking back to the van with my partner. We had run out of John and Romans, and it was getting close to dusk, so we usually wrap it up around dark. So we were just going to grab a couple more and get out a few more before dark. And this young, I don't want to say boy, he's probably, I don't know, late teens, early 20s. He comes running up, and he had a friend with him. And I had one invitation left, so I gave it to him. And he said, oh, do you have any English? And they ask for English a lot, just because they like to see English. They think it's kind of a novelty or something. So I was going to let my guide talk to him. So she starts talking to him. I don't know what she's saying. And then he goes, no, I speak English. I don't speak that language. And I was like, I speak English. I can talk to you. And so it was funny because the role completely reversed. And she, was like, what is he saying? And I was able to pick up. So that was a blessing. And so as we walked back to the van, I started witnessing to him. And it turns out he was a Seventh-day Adventist. And he was asking for literature in English because he wanted to know more about the Bible, and he seemed really open, but I wasn't quite sure how serious he was at the time, because I had my Bible with me, and I was like, I don't know if I should just give him my Bible, or how serious is he? I wanted to see if maybe he'd come to the meeting. I had a chick tract with me in my purse back at the van, so I was like, wait here, I'll get it for you. So I got him. I had the Attack. That was the only one I had, so I gave him the chick tract. I said, this is in English. If you can come to the meeting, it will be in English also, so you'll be able to pick up some of it. And he said, I will. And I was like, okay, that would be great. So after a short witness, he ran off, and then the next day we had the meeting, and I was just praying for him, and I told the Lord, I was like, Lord, there's over 1,000 people here. I doubt I'll see him, but you know if he's here, you know what he needs to hear, and just please prepare his heart. And so I prayed for him all that day, didn't know. The next day was Sunday, and we were able to attend the church service. And as some of the members stood up and testified, a lady stood up and said that her son, who had been kind of astray or rebelling, he had come and visited the church. And he stood up, he looked back and waved at me, and I was like, that's a Seventh-day Adventist. And so that was a blessing, and I had no idea, like if he had got saved or if he, but he seemed genuine. He wanted to learn. And so I just kept praying for him. I was able to talk to him for a minute after the service. And then all that week, we had 2 more meetings. I never saw him. And then the last day, Friday, was our last day. We went to a village. And so in the morning when we had our devotional, they gave thank yous and testimonies, and his mom stood up and it was translated, and she said that her son had gotten saved that night before at the meeting. And so it was just a blessing to even the thing that I do as easy as breathing, speaking English, was used in Africa to bring a wayward son, and his mom attended that church. That was just, the Lord can do special things, and it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with him, and that was just a blessing. So that was really neat. I'm probably going really long. As you can tell, I could go on and on, but I'll just wrap it up. I do want to mention that it said a lot, but if the Lord is putting something on your heart to lead you to go on something like this, like Jonathan said, more often than not is for your benefit as much as anyone else's. Don't ignore that. If you want to go somewhere where God is doing a great work, it will build your faith. That is the least I can say about it. It's just amazing to see. Some of my favorite times were sitting at the meetings. It start to get dark, the preacher's preaching, and you look over the crowd of people and you study their faces, and you can see the ones who are convicted. You can see the ones who are like hearing something they have never heard before. And then you can see, of course, those who are just there for the show, but you pray for those people individually, even though you don't know them, and you see what the Lord can do through just the power of his word. It's really amazing. I just encourage you, if you can, try to go, and it will be a blessing. So thank you guys.